original red Faleka. Remember Auntie Lily Faleka? That's Auntie Lily's son. On election day, I will not go to the polls and betray my conscience. Election day, make sure you follow your conscience. Choose change now. The people's campaign. And if you're not serious about change, I suggest you stay out of the way and give Cyril Uruwei Garcia. We could give her this chance. We want this change, we need this change, we need that change right now. We need our country back from the PUP and the UDP. We need our country back. Things are getting harder and harder every day. We need our country back. Cyril Uruwei, he look on the play. We need our Dangriga back. Uruwei na fire. He's a proven leader. Uruwei na fire. A fearless advocate. Uruwei na fire. Son of soil from Dangriga. Uruwei na fire. Ready to fight for his people. We want this change, we need this change, we need that change right now. We need our country back from the PUP and the UDP. We need our country back. Things are getting harder and harder every day. We need our country.
Testing 1, 2. Good night, everyone. Greetings to each and every one of you from the culture capital, Dangriga. I'm actually early today, early tonight. The show is scheduled for 8 p.m. Tonight, I will have the Honorable Party Leader, Tracy Taegar Panton. There's a lot we will be talking about. The municipal elections are upon us. I want to make sure that we stay connected, be informed. Be informed, brothers and sisters. A whole lot will be shared on this platform and in national TV as well, on national TV. Those of you who have a vested interest in your town, in our town, it is important that we make that known, that we care about what happens in our town, in Dangriga town. Nationally, that we care about what happens in our country overall. I want to play a video and ask you guys to observe with me. I want your take as to what you all see. Testing, 1, 2. Yeah, testing. I don't know how much you guys missed. The way this broadcasting software works, based on the frame that I'm displaying, I can choose whether one is muted or one is unmuted. So as I transition to different view, this other view was muted. I didn't realize. I was talking about being aware of what's happening in our community, being knowledgeable, paying attention to what is happening around us. I was talking about the BTL Smart acquisition, how the Prime Minister, the Janet Senior administration, is well on its way to monopolize the telecommunication industry here in Belize. Now, that is not the only problem, that there will be a monopoly. And at this point in time, many have agreed that a monopoly is not good for Belize. Not at this moment, not in this point in time, hardly ever will. It is not in our best interest. So, what do we do when the government of Belize, the Bresenio administration, is forcing on us something that is not beneficial to the public? Now, they say that the public, that BTL is owned by the public. The public have majority shares. When the public is saying, no, we don't want it, Johnny Bresenio and all the others in support of this deal, most of them, or all of them, will be benefiting. It's highly likely that they will be benefiting handsomely. It is already known that Johnny Bresenio's family owns Smart. They stand to profit 18 million. They stand to earn $18 million out of this deal if this deal goes through, the Bresenio family. Is it responsible of us as citizens of this country? Is it responsible of us as residents of this town? I have a suggestion for those of you here in Dangriga. I have a suggestion for those of you in Belize City. I have a suggestion for those of you in Punta Gorda. For those of you here in Dangriga, if you agree with this acquisition, make it make sense for me. The government want to acquire, BTL want to acquire Smart. If it makes sense for Uno, make it make sense for me. And for those of you who already know that this is a bad deal, it is not a smart deal. No pun intended. For those of you who agree that this is not a smart deal, Why don't you tell your area representative, we elected an area representative, all of us. One who is a representative must be representing someone or a group of people, as far as I know, as far as I understand. Mr. Louis Abani was elected by the people of Dangriga. He won the election, whether they buy the votes or not. The man win the election. So Dangriga elected Minister Louis Abani to represent the Dangriga people. To represent the Dangriga people. So, for those of you who do not agree with this BTL Smart acquisition, I listened to Seabot. Seabot suggested that all smart users should disconnect, unplug, stop using smartphone, get a chip from Digi. Now, know that the people of Belize practically own Digi because the public of Belize, the public, have most of the shares. So, if the government of Belize is trying to take over Smart, and that is not a good deal for the people of Belize, just unplug from Smart and make Smart go bankrupt. That's a smart move. That's a smart move. So tonight, we're going to talk about all that with the Honorable Party Leader, Tracy Taegar Panton, at 8 p.m. But in the meantime, I want to vibe with you guys. You know, to watch the news or what? Are you guys watching the news? Are we watching the news? Make I play this video. Are we watching the news? Right here, so. Colonel High. So this was a couple months ago. This here was a couple months ago. Listen.
I don't like to know when the Prime Minister, when it was announced that the Prime Minister press the pause button on the acquisition, me happy. I don't tell the truth, you never happy too? Tell the truth, man, you never happy too? The pause, that PUP at its best. When it happened before, me don't know where that not PUP. The pause, the PUP at its best. Because what the pause allows us to do now is to make sure that there is real, genuine consultation with the people of Belize on this issue. So that the technical people from BTL can go all across this country, go to the schools, go to UB, go to the community centers all across the country and talk to the people in our cordial way, in our honest way, in our open way, in our friendly way, and take their time doing it with no gun and nobody head.
But was there such consultation? If it happened, it surely escaped the attention or notice of our newsroom, and we don't see it on Digi's Facebook page. All the consultation meetings they posted were with high-level parties, and all of them before Hyde's mid-February speech.
And if after a couple months of consultation, the people not there with it, then BTL will have to take a chill pill, you know. They will have to take a chill pill. They will have to shelf it. Because ultimately, it's the people of Belize who owns the company.
Absolutely.
It's not Mr. Lizaraga. It's not the board of BTL. It's the people of Belize.
In the end, though, that populist spin didn't count for much. That chill pill lasted for about 6 months. 5 days ago, on July 31st, Chairman Mark Lizaraga told the NTUCB in a letter, quote, Belize Telemedia Limited confirms that stakeholder consultations were undertaken in relation to the proposed transaction. He adds, quote, responsibility for this matter now rests with the Public Utilities Commission. Accordingly, BTL will continue to respect and participate in the applicable regulatory process and will abide by any determinations made by the PUC. But 4 days later, Lizaraga's board took a vote on the acquisition without any PUC approval, and they voted 8-2 in favor. A press release announcing the long-delayed vote makes scarce mention of the PUC and any regulatory constraints. It simply says that the only thing pending now is, quote, the satisfactory completion of continued due diligence and the negotiation of appropriate representations, warranties, and other contractual protections for BTL as the buyer. Once the negotiations advance to the definitive agreement stage, the share purchase agreement will be submitted to the board for separate review and final approval before execution, end quote. And while the PUC put out a feeble and toothless release today saying, quote, accordingly, the Commission is unable to comment on the public discussion on the proposed transaction or indicate a likely outcome before completing its review. The decision will constitute the PUC's official position on the matter. But this accountant and business leader says essentially the BTL board's announcement is the PUC's decision.
The transaction essentially is a foregone conclusion because that vote yesterday essentially tells the public and tells everyone that this deal is going through one way or the other. And who, from a PUC?
Brothers and sisters, listen, I want to comment briefly. I already have the Honorable Tracy Taegar Panton in the waiting room. Before I bring her on, one of the most important things about this deal, this BTL Smart acquisition, there is no consultation with the public. I have a big problem with that. And I salute the Honorable Cordell Hyde to stand his ground. I salute the Honorable Julius Espat to stand his ground. We as a people, we must let our conscience be our guide. We can't allow the small minority to just listen. We're going into details. The party leader will dissect this situation with us. In the meantime, what I'll do, just so I could bring her on live, I will run this video and then I will be back with you guys.
Standpoint, it's just a matter of timing as to when they give some sort of indication that it would have been approved.
So you don't trust that the PUC is particularly acting in the best interest of the public?
I think until we hear from the PUC, I think I'd be reserved to make a comment on that.
So do you consider it a done deal?
From a BTL standpoint, yes. It's a done deal. I don't think this will go back or be reversed. It's just the nature of the thing.
Listen, I don't like to know when the Prime Minister, when it was announced that the Prime Minister press the pause button on the acquisition, me happy. I don't tell the truth, you never happy too? Tell the truth, man, you never happy too? The pause, that PUP at its best. When it happened before, me don't know where that. That are PUP. The pause, the PUP at its best. Because what the pause allows us to do now is to make sure that there is real, genuine consultation with the people of Belize on this issue. So that the technical people from BTL can go all across this country, go to the schools, go to UB, go to the community centers all across the country and talk to the people in our cordial way, in our honest way, in our open way, in our friendly way, and take their time doing it with no gun and nobody head.
But was there such consultation? If it happened, it surely escaped the attention or notice of our newsroom, and we don't see it on Digi's Facebook page. All the consultation meetings they posted were with high-level parties, and all of them before Hyde's mid-February speech.
And if after a couple months of consultation, the people not there with it, then BTL will have to take a chill pill, you know. They will have to take a chill pill. They will have to shelf it. Because ultimately, it's the people of Belize who owns the company. It's not Mr. Lizarraga. It's not the board of BTL. It's the people of Belize.
In the end, though, that populist spin didn't count for much. That chill pill lasted for about 6 months. 5 days ago, on July 31st, Chairman Mark Lizarraga told the NTUCB in a letter, quote, Belize Telemedia Limited confirms that stakeholder consultations were undertaken in relation to the proposed transaction. He adds, quote, responsibility for this matter now rests with the Public Utilities Commission. Accordingly, BTL will continue to respect and participate in the applicable regulatory process and will abide by any determinations made by the PUC. But 4 days later, Lizarraga's board took a vote on the acquisition without any PUC approval, and they voted 8-2 in favor. A press release announcing the long-delayed vote makes scarce mention of the PUC and any regulatory constraints. It simply says that the only thing pending now is, quote, the satisfactory completion of continued due diligence and the negotiation of appropriate representations, warranties, and other contractual protections for BTL as the buyer. Once the negotiations advance to the definitive agreement stage, the share purchase agreement will be submitted to the board for separate review and final approval before execution, end quote. And while the PUC put out a feeble and toothless release today saying, quote, accordingly, the Commission is unable to comment on the public discussion on the proposed transaction or indicate a likely outcome before completing its review. The decision will constitute the PUC's official position on the matter. But this accountant and business leader says essentially the BTL board's announcement is the PUC's decision.
The transaction essentially is a foregone conclusion because that vote yesterday essentially tells the public and tells everyone that this deal is going through one way or the other. And who, from a PUC standpoint, it's just a matter of timing as to when they give some sort of indication that it would have been approved.
So you don't trust that the PUC is particularly acting in the best interest of the public?
I think until we hear from the PUC, I think I'd be reserved to make a comment on that.
So do you consider it a done deal?
From a BTL standpoint, yes, it's a done deal. I don't think this will go back or be reversed. It's just the nature of the thing.
Listen, I don't like to know when the Prime Minister, when it was announced that the Prime Minister press the pause button.
Greetings, everyone. Good night to you. Good night to you from Dangriga, the culture capital. Belize City, San Pedro, Kikaka, all the way to Punta Gorda. To those in the diaspora, greetings to you, New York, Chicago, California. Wherever you may be tonight, greetings from Dangriga. Family and friends, we have been enduring a great deal of hardship, big pills to swallow lately. We have the case of the redistricting with Jerry Enriquez. We have corruption after corruption, the MIRA and family scandal. And now we have the government of Belize, BTL smart acquisition. We watch the TV, we listen to the news, we sit in our homes with our iPad and our iPhone. You might be watching this program on your flat screen TV. Question yourself tonight. Question your conscience. Are you okay with what have been reported in the news lately? Do you think your town, your community could be better? Do you think our leaders are making wise decisions when it comes to how they use the public purse, our money, taxpayers' money? We have municipal elections coming soon. So, everyone, to all of you, let's keep an open ear, let's keep an open eye. I invited the Honorable Tracy Taegar Panton tonight to share some of the recent occurrences in the news, to share with us what's happening, how it's looking for Belize, what the projections might be. What do we see in the future? Do we see a light at the end of the tunnel? Honorable Party Leader, I want to say welcome, good night to you. Welcome to Dangriga Unmuted, where we unmute the truth and we demand change. You don't need much or any introduction. I want to ask you, invite us into your world. When you are in your home, when you are with your family, your daughter, your brother, your family and friends, what do you see when you look outside? When you look in the streets, what do you see when you turn on the news? What do you see from your vantage point? How does it make you feel?
Well, let me say, first of all, good night, Brother Cyril. Thank you for inviting me to be on the show. I think your show creates an important platform for the sharing of ideas and opinions, and hopefully some solutions as we look at shaping the future of our beloved country. I sit here, I was invited in my capacity as the leader of the opposition for Belize. And in that position, I'm a constitutional office holder. And I have obligations, constitutional obligations, particularly to hold the government to account. But I also sit here as a citizen of this country. I have given almost 40 years of my professional service to various aspects of nation building. I sit here as a mother of two young women, now in their early 30s, who are trying their best to make their own contributions to nation building. I sit here as a daughter, a sister, as you say, who was raised in a household that taught us that service mattered, that integrity mattered, that representation mattered, that being able to engage in meaningful dialogue matters if we really want to put Belize on her strongest legs. And I think every Belizean citizen, I hope that every citizen that lives here, works here, send their children to school here, want to ensure that whatever we do collectively and individually contributes to putting Belize on her strongest legs. The future of this country depends on the decisions we take today. And it is nothing short of a travesty what it particularly this move to proceed with the acquisition, BTL acquiring Smart and its reason, because the government has a duty and an obligation to ensure that things that we say are important are important. For example, an independent assessment of this acquisition, some kind of deep the regulatory framework or safeguards to protect consumers, investors, workers of the telecom industry in Belize. Things like remaining compliant with our own laws. And in the Telecommunications Act, you know, there is a clause of 42, I think it's 42B, that speaks about the dangers of a monopoly and why, particularly in telecommunications, it's not encouraged and should never happen. And in my view, if it proceeds, violates that legal statute. So there are many things that come to the front. I think more importantly, I think for me, what is most fundamental is the issue that the Social Security Board, who receive contributions from working Belizeans, a major stake in BTL already. Maybe us, we don't know, because we don't have any details on how this transaction will unfold, how it is going to be financed, whether the financing arrangements make sense, what ultimately will be the cost to the Belizean worker, to the Belizean taxpayer, whether you contribute to the Consolidated Revenue Fund or whether you contribute to the Social Security Board Fund. And Belizeans don't have an option to opt in or opt out. You must make your contributions and you must pay taxes in this country so that services can be provided to Belizean people. So we look at this, what seems to be in a, you know, whether we like it or not, it is going to proceed. It begs the question, what are we prepared to do as a Belizean people to arrest this situation, to ensure that this situation is derailed, to ensure that the government, who received an overwhelming mandate from the Belizean people, act in the best interest of this country and not in the best interest of a select few.
This is loaded. There's a lot to unpack. But before we go deeper, there are some of us out there who might make decisions based on the color of our party. Some might make decisions because they might say, I don't bother the government for nothing. They don't feed me. I got my own business. I take care of myself. And then you will have those from the opposite party, the PUP, who might not understand much or anything, but have this vehement attack to defend this deal. Categorically, tell these people what is at stake.
About $73 million for BEL, for the BEL bailout. We have gotten over $500 million in new loans that we have to repay. And we won't repay them in this lifetime. They're going to be loans that will be carried for future generations who would have never received the direct benefit from the initiatives funded under these programs. It is easy to say this is a partisan issue. It is easy to say this is about red or blue and or differing political ideologies. But I beg to differ. This issue is a national issue where we must come together in spite of our political differences, in spite of our different political ideologies, in the interest of Belize. Somebody is going to walk away with $80 million without having to provide the people of this country any explanation if this is a viable and worthy investment on behalf of the Belizean people. We understand a portion of this investment of these proceeds will go to the family of the Prime Minister himself. That's an inherent conflict of interest. And it is certainly not the best practice when it comes to good governance in this country. And this is a government who went to Parliament at the beginning of its term and said, not only said, pass a motion. And a motion has an equal weight as to law, and said, we will establish the gold standard in transparency and accountability where it relates to any business on behalf of the Belizean people. And to me, it is a complete betrayal when no information, I think that the information that has been asked by the opposition, the information that has been asked by the NTUCB, the information that has been asked by the BCCI, the information that has been asked by our other civil society and social partners is a reasonable questions. and should the answers should be responded to, because this is not the government's piggy bank. This is not the Prime Minister's personal purse. This is the people's money. And we have a right as citizens to understand the details of any transaction that the government, is executing on behalf of the Belizean people.
Now, I listened to Mr. Flowers, Dean Flowers. Before I play this video clip, you said it will happen. It will happen. Explain to us, why is it certain? Why are you certain that it will happen, and what do we do from here?
Because it's a common practice of the government. It is a common practice of the government to completely disregard the views of the Belizean people, to act unilaterally, to be dismissive and disrespectful to the social partners who have a duty and an obligation and a responsibility to hold government to account. And so, yes, we get jaded, right? We get jaded in this process because it happens over and over and over, and government irregardless. And the only way, in my opinion, for government to be stopped in its tracks is for the people of this country to stand up and to speak out and to say enough is enough is enough. It is up to us to stand, make a stand for this country and to come to. Yes, we may have different agendas, but we share common interests. And the issue of the BTL acquisition of Smart and Speednet is a clear indication. Every entity, either by itself or collectively, we share the same concern. In our view, there is no way we can support the state-owned monopoly that is going to be in contravention to the Telecommunications Act and where there is no information available to us to make an informed decision.
Now, you cleared up why you're certain that it will happen. This is the way of this administration. But where do we go from here?
Could I say something,
What do
Cyril?
we do?
I will say this in fairness to those government ministers who have indicated early that they can support this deal. You know, we have, I think you played the clip earlier of the Honorable Colonel Hyde speaking at a PUP party event where he said, if the people say no, it's no, we have to respect the people. And we heard from the Honorable Julius Espat, I think last night in an interview, said that the people have not been consulted.
Yes.
This is a Belizean-owned company. This company is owned by Belizeans, and Belizeans have a right to be heard on these issues. Belizeans have a right to ask the questions, and Belizeans have a right to get appropriate responses to the questions they ask. And so that for me is a glimmer of hope, because I don't think the government or the prime minister can afford any anarchy in his camp. And I know of at least 6 members of cabinet who have said we don't support this. And so it is going to be interesting to see what comes out of that special cabinet meeting that we understand is planned for tomorrow, where this issue is going to be discussed. But the people don't want the questions to be discussed in cabinet. As the Honorable Colonel Hyde, you meet the people where they are in their academic institutions, in their communities, in their places of work, and you speak with them honestly, and you speak with them openly, and you speak with them cordially, you speak with them with respect, because that is the only way you're going to build trust and confidence in the people that you say you wish to lead, you wish to serve, and you wish to represent.
Let me play this clip by Mr. Dean Fuller, and we could comment on it.
At some point in time, we have to ask ourselves, will we simply continue to complain, or when will we collectively decide to make that call for, one, peaceful resistance by sitting in the hundreds in the offices of Social Security to disrupt services, sitting in by the thousands in the offices of BTL, and ultimately, if the policy decisions, if the Constitution does not change where accountability is concerned, then we need to call for civil unrest. That I can't put it no nicer than that, my brother. That is where I am as a citizen who has a civic responsibility and duty to the future of this country. Well, guess what? Public officers could also say the same. But if you want public officers to come out here and sacrifice 2, 3, 4, 5 days of their salaries, then the media need to say we have sacrificed for a month of revenues as well. Or we don't want to hear nothing from a government who's clearly not is in the best interest of the people. We all have to sacrifice to not necessarily bring down, but to change a corrupt system and to change a government that is running a cabal privately to seize the wealth of this country and ultimately to impose a dictatorship on this country, because the signs are there, they're all there.
That is sobering. Now I understand that Mr. Flowers is likely see this as a private individual and not as the president of the PSU, I'm assuming, from listening to it. What do you take from this, especially his expressions of civil unrest?
Well, I think this is where this is heading, and I say that because BTL is only but one issue. There are a number of issues that continue to fall on deaf ears. We have Mr. Enriquez, a soul warrior who continues to advocate and fight for equal representation via the redistricting process. We have a situation where there is no ombudsman, and an ombudsman was removed, in my opinion, because he dared to challenge the status quo, where the Freedom of Information Act provides for government to put the information requested in the public domain. You have the situation of the Cuban doctors and our long-standing relationship with the government of Cuba, where our policy and our diplomatic relations are being colored by a policy directive that is not our own. And we're scrambling because tied to that policy decision is $125 million grant. And the prospect of getting $125 million for education and for energy security is more important than our sovereignty. We look at the situation with the BEL bailout, and you cannot call it an investment when shares in BEL, October of last year, preference share was sold for $1.57. And in the BEL's annual report, preference shares were valued at $2. But we have a government without explanation who have agreed to buy preference shares of BEL for $9. No assessment, no evaluation, no reason other than it's bailing BEL out of its debt. And I will agree that this country has to stand up with BEL. The truth is, it's too big to fail. And electricity and energy security is a cornerstone of our national development. But how do we get from $2, from $1.50 to $2 to $9 without any justification? And you know whose money is going to be used? It is the contributors to the Social Security Fund. And then We have, government keeps boasting, there's no new taxes, but every day, government fees increase. Just today, there's a new $10 fee that if you're taking a commuter flight in this country, you now have to pay an additional $10 for the quote unquote security arrangements when people can hardly afford to let ends meet. We have BTL. We have 600 million and climbing in external debt. And borrowing is part of the solution. But then we have to prioritize. If we cannot afford to borrow $600 million, then we have to prioritize the initiatives so that we can be able to accommodate some of the more pressing concerns. I haven't even raised issues like NHI because the government wants you to swallow that pill when there is no disclosure on how these contracts are being issued. When even the members of the NHI Commission cannot review a budget, cannot review a contract, something is wrong. When a piece of legislation is written that no matter what the approved NHI authority may say on a matter, not the Minister of Health, but the Minister of Finance unilaterally can change that decision without consultation. So I understand when President Flowers says we're moving to a dictatorship, because that is what a dictatorship looks like. And then now, here we are with an $80 million. It's not $8 and not $800 and not $800,000, $80 million with no information to substantiate it. And we must agree. They say, trust me. Trust me. I'm doing this in your interest. If the deal is so good, if this deal is so good, if this deal will make sense for the Belizean people in the medium to long term, show us the numbers. Because you and I know the future of internet services is not telecommunication, it's not through cable, it's through satellite. And so all this equipment and all this infrastructure and it's going to be obsolete if it's not obsolete already. What are we doing? Why are we not spending that $80 million in so let me just finish this thought. In $80 million in investing in the future, not in buying outdated infrastructure or software that will not be the solution that we need in 10 years. And worse, Cyril, and I know you want to interrupt me, there is an inherent conflict of interest in this deal. And that, my friend, is not acceptable. So it seems to me that if the government doesn't take a pause and look at things critically, that what is possible and what we have seen in the past is civil unrest. Because how much more do we expect our Belizean people to bear?
Absolutely. I want to kind of unpack that a bit when it comes to the technical aspect of this deal. You made an important point, and being in technology, I understand that all the towers, we were at a point when we used to use dial-up network. When you hear that scrambling, your phone starts scramble when the internet connect. Very, very slow. You could have never upload the type of images we're uploading nowadays from a phone. Impossible. Technology has advanced and will keep advancing. Now, when this acquisition goes through. We're buying towers, we're buying all the hardware, computers, all the wires, all of that. We are on the verge of moving into satellite. Eventually, it's going to happen. I cannot tell you when, but it's going to happen. Satellite is already here. Satellite image. I'm not image, but internet. With satellite, you don't need to wire anything. You don't need towers. You don't need antenna. You don't need any of that. It's just like cable. They were trying to sell us some cable companies too, right? Am I correct? They were trying to sell us some cable companies. Cable is practically outdated. Everybody is on YouTube. Everybody is on Facebook. Everybody is on TikTok. Nobody there for no cable right now. And they were trying to sell the Belizean people cable companies as well. So I had to add that in for all of us regular Belizeans to be cognizant of, to keep that in our minds. And I also want to add, while I have the Honorable Tracy Taegar Panton here, personally for myself as an independent thinker, I brought her here because she has more understanding than I do when it comes to these matters. And she can help unpack them and help us understand. So I ask each and every one of you, no matter where you stand, I ask that you maintain an open mind, listen to what is being said, and let truth prevail. There's so many things happening in this country, man. And for me personally, I have to take a stand. Party leader, I often say to myself, just not too long ago, I was reflecting and I meditate and I said, man, where is the light at the end of the tunnel? From one corruption to the next. And as we exit from this smart BTL deal, and I would like to ask you a question specifically about the issue of national affairs, this Cuba, US Cuba issue. What we listen to Brother Flowers, what in your mind, what do you see the next month or two unfolding should this go through? You don't say it will happen. What does Belize look like for the activists, for the unions, for the leader of the opposition and the entire UDP? What does the fight look like if there will be a fight?
There has to be a fight. There is no way we can remain quiet, because to do so would mean that we're complicit. And whoever joins the fight, however, do we see the power of one? The image of Mr. Enriquez, Jeremy Enriquez, walking up the stairs of the Supreme Court, the power of one. And while I would want to urge the masses, the power lies in the hands of the people, it's not in the hands of the politicians. And I'm saying whether the masses come out or not, the fight will continue, because we have to fight for what is fair, what is right, what is just for this country. We are still developing, and we are still very much young in our sense of self and sense of national development, national pride. There's so much more that we have to do. And so we need to have champions, we need to have advocates, we need to have warriors. And we ask the Belizean people to join us. Today, as the opposition, we met with the NTUCB. And to be fair, we've been trying to have these meetings on a regular basis. And this meeting was planned before the BTL fiasco unfolded. But very much on the agenda today was the BTL issue on what we can do collaboratively. The unions like to stand away from political entities because we have a political prerogative. And yes, we do. The United Democratic Party does have a political prerogative, and we make no excuses for that, because that is how our democracy works. And whether or not we agree with the system of a democratic governance structure, it is the best we have. We cannot afford an authoritarian regime in this country. And it is, I have to agree with Mr. Flowers, it seems to be leaning in that direction, and we have to push back, and we have to push back hard, because all we know as a Belizean people is the opportunity we've had to live in a peaceful democracy, a constructive democracy. And any away from that, we have to push back, whether it's the masses, whether the civil society partners, whether the unions, whether the oppositions, individually or together. We cannot give up on the fight.
I agree. Now, stepping away from the BTL smart issue, before we move to the next topic, I want to go to the comments and see what our viewers are saying. Aaron Anderson, not one that goes to the house and talk how great the government is doing, Kazi or not. I miss that, brother. Isa Williams, absolutely true. And the same I will always say. Together we can demand for this PM removal.
Yes, we can seek to have a referendum, a people's referendum. It's not.
This is bad. We are in a very, we're heading toward dictatorship. Odessa Hila, it's sad how everything is going up in our country, except for the people them paychecks. That is true. Abner Bakab, there is already a fee on part of the local airlines for tour. This keeps going up. So for tourist visitors of our country. Mr. Herman Martinez, good night to all your viewers. It's sad this loyal opposition is so weak. I'll watch. I guess you misspelled something here. You know, I want to ask each and every one of you, all of you who tune into Dangriga Unmuted, Ubafu TV, I beg each and every one of you, if you will comment, if you will share a thought, let it be constructive. As I read these comments, I hope that we will be constructive, we will be honest, we will be respectful, and comment based on the topic and matter at hand. Please, I beg each and every one of you. Let me read that clip. That clip that you played by Dean Flowers should have given the lot of enough. Brother, let's deal with the matters at hand. I appreciate you tuning into the show, the many times you tune in, but let's be respectful. Let's deal with the matters at hand at this time. Let me take a look at 3 more comments and then we will proceed. The crime minister don't give a fruit of the loom, I guess. Brief about the people of Belize. Mr. Philip Willoughby, what is the actual cost to generate KW versus what we pay? What's KW? I'm not sure. Party leader, thanks again for making yourself available. I am truly appreciative because, as mentioned earlier, I try to bring people on this platform to educate the masses for those who tune into Dangriga Unmuted Ubafu TV. You mentioned about this situation with the US and Cuban nurses, doctors here in Belize. What would be your position if you were in the position of power?
I don't think we have to reinvent the wheel. I think there are examples in this region even where that ask has been made and solutions have been provided. For example, in Jamaica, where a decision was taken to make the brigade become permanent residents of Jamaica. There are diplomatic and other tools that can be utilized to ensure that we can maintain, in my opinion, the relationship and the value of the relationship by the medical brigade to this country. They have served, we have had nurses, we have had doctors, we have specialists, many of them serving in some of the most remote areas in this country. And I think that we ought to respect the history and the relationship we have shared with Cuba. And if indeed there is a sanction that we brought against our country because of these relationships, then we need to find a way to bridge that gap and to say, your friends respect you. Your friend may not always agree with you, but your friend respects your decision if that person is your friend. The US is a friend of Belize, and they may not agree with all the relationships we have, but I think that in real terms, especially when we have a friend who have served alongside us since our independence, that we should be able to determine what tools or instruments we can put in place that will help us to maintain those relationships while still trying to advance this relationship with the US. Because the truth is, if the US sneezes, we catch a cold. We hear that all the time.
Mhm.
The United States is a strategic partner for Belize, and Belize is a strategic partner for the United States. And so let us find areas where we're not always going to agree, but let's see how we can negotiate in the interest of the needs of our country, because the United States is negotiating in the interest of their country. And that is what they ought to do. And Belize should negotiate in the interest of our country, because that is what our citizens expect of us. So and I think I heard this week, very cursory, the Minister for Foreign Affairs, the Honorable Francis Fonseca, saying we're looking at that as a potential solution, and I hope that it will bear fruit. We have had this long-standing relationship with Cuba, and Cuba has had a long-standing relationship with Belize. For us, it's a humanitarian issue. It should be, because these professionals have been true friends to the Belizean people.
One individual commented and asked, the US is against, or let's just say in layman term, the US doesn't want these Cuban doctors or Belize to have this relationship with Cuba. Is it safe to say that?
So yes, so
So,
what the U.S. has its concerns with Cuba, as we know, and they have couched it as humanitarian concerns, and that they believe that Cuba should be free from this kind of a socialist regime that now exists in Cuba. They have an opinion on that, and so they're saying any country that does, and not only Belize, but any country that does continues to have this relationship with Cuba, uh, will be sanctioned, will 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 come to will have sanctions to bear that the U.S. government imposes. And I know for sure one of the sanctions that is possible is that if you have a relationship with Cuba, these funds that come from the MCC program will not be available to your country.
all right.
So
And
Belize has got $125 million in grant funding. 41 US million of that is for energy security, and what 80 million of it is for educational reform, particularly with the vocational and technical training of our Belizean nationals, and then of course there's administrative costs and consultation costs and things like that. But the truth is, if we don't agree to support the kind of sanctions that the U.S. will impose on the Cuban government, and we do not sever our ties as a result, one of the direct implications for us is that that grant will be retracted. And of course, that's a hard decision because $125 million is serious money.
US,
You know,
125 US or Belize?
125 million US dollars, 250
Million Belize.
Belize dollars. So that's a significant um, injection in our education program, in our energy security program, where we and it's provided as a grant facility. So it means that there are
You
no
won't, they don't need to pay it back.
but there's certain things we have to do, certain policy prescriptions we would have to abide by, including how we treat with our friends in Cuba.
So one question viewer asked, so if we won't be working with Cuba, will US send some of their experts? Or we
But I think
just
for me well, I think what I have heard from speaking with some of the U.S. officers in Belize is that Belize would then have to procure these services from other countries that don't have the same that the U.S. don't have the same concerns about in terms of human rights violations or a socialist regime or whatever these issues are. And so Belize then would have to look at procuring these services from other countries that would not have the same kind of sanctions. I don't know that the United States would be one of them that we can afford, because we would have to procure those services at whatever the value of those services are in those countries. So we'd have to look at places where we've looked before to see where we can fill the gaps.
it is indeed a tough decision, and it's important for us common folks out here to understand what is at stake. I mean, $250 million is a lot. And I ask you, what would be your position? What would you do? Are we saying that we should just grant these doctors residency? Would that be part of your move?
Well, I think that, like I said, there are solutions that, like, we have to reinvent the wheel. There are solutions where the formal program and the formal arrangements with the Cuban government is severed, but we keep these professionals in country under some kind of legal status, and then they work in these facilities and get paid directly rather through the Cuban government. So I believe there are solutions. I don't think all is lost, and I hope that we can find a way to be mindful of the services that these professionals have given to this country over a long period of time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you for the feedback. Now we move to all the whenever you think that the scandal over the corruption done, another one pop up. And I had Mr. Webster last night, and we were talking about how we were governed. I had Mr. Alberto Argas not too long ago as well. Similarly, we were talking about how we are governed, and he has a proposal or some proposed ideas as to how our governing system should or could change. Did you get a chance to read his proposal? And if yes, what is your take on his suggestions?
I haven't read specifically the proposal that came from our former Vice Chair, Mr. Alberto August. But what I do know is that the government invested significantly in the PCC, the People's Constitutional Commission, and they were a very large group of stakeholders that traversed the length and breadth of of the country, looking specifically at the Constitution and places where we can make amendments so that we can strengthen our system of governance, strengthen our public institutions, strengthen the privileges and rights afforded to our citizens. And that report sits somewhere on some desk. And none of those recommendations have been brought before the people when the government went to the people and requested the insight and input of the people and several institutions. I don't think we missed any. And we took time and energy, and there was great consultation. And I would like to see what came out of the consultation with the people. I would like to look at the report that came out of. I know Mr. August was a member of the commission. Our present chair lady of the United Democratic Party was a member of the commission, and so they are privy to some of the recommendations that were in that report. But it hasn't been brought before Parliament, and it hasn't been brought to the Belizean people to say, "Here, these are the recommendations, and let's take these recommendations to referendum so we can get an agreement and implement the constitutional changes that will be necessary to ensure that there is that kind of oversight and accountability that is required in governance, and not only in the executive and the legislature, but also in the judiciary. The three arms of government must be working optimally, and times have changed and we have evolved. And so I think the time is right for us to look at these recommendations and come up with those that will have the greatest impact in the shortest amount of time.
In his proposal, he talked about separating the rat from the cheese. ERA representatives should stay within their constituencies and deal with the people and have no access to the finances. The technical people, the administrators, the one who went to school to study for whatever they need to know if they're working in the Ministry of Health, the Ministry of Defense, they are the ones who have access, so to speak, and then distribute. What's your take on that?
The people empower the representatives, right? The people vote for the politicians because they believe that the persons who have offered themselves to be the key players in governance are the people that they want to represent their ideas, their concerns, their points of view. So there is a reason why we elect our representatives, because this is what we do in terms of the structures of our governing systems is not in isolation of the people. The people will know what is best for the people, and the people will determine who they believe and should, in my opinion, determine who they believe provides the kind of leadership that is required to for us to take that quantum leap, if you will, in terms of nation building, in terms of our own sustainable growth and development, and all the things that are important to us in terms of our national identity. And I don't think you we can or ever should take away the power away from the people. We have seen that even when the people empower their leaders forget how they got there. And I always say to people, don't relinquish your power. The people will determine. The people decided that the People's United Party would be sitting in the halls of government, and the people can decide that they will change that. And so I do believe that the voices of the people ought to be strengthened, not minimized. And there is a role for political leaders who have been elected. I think our Senate should be elected, for example, because it should reflect, those who serve should reflect the will of the people.
Right, and I think that's part of what he was saying. The representative, yes, they will represent the people in the House of Representatives, but um, they they will not be leading a ministry per se. All that work will be left up to qualified people, because in the end, these qualified individuals still have to come back to the the era representatives. They still have to go to these qualified individuals. But I want to pause right there, and the
But I think
reasons
that
for
I think that makes the assumption, which I don't necessarily agree with, that those who seek political office are not qualified. And I don't make that assumption at all. And many of us
you
have
have a
worked,
point.
we've worked
You,
very hard. We are we have given our lives to this country. I think that people, most people, I would like to believe that people who offer themselves for public service and for to be in political leadership have a vision for the country and believe that that we can make a contribution to the development of Belize. I think that's the premise, um, and I think that our political leaders are eminently qualified. Most of us, if not all of us, to conduct ourselves in a
Party
fashion.
leader, I agree with you that yeah, we don't want to assume that our area representatives are not qualified, but oftentimes we have to agree quite often that they don't have the qualifications um to deal with some of these matters, so they will eventually have to go to the experts. I brought up this topic simply because, again, as mentioned in my description when I posted that I would be having you live, we see the current administration and past administrations abuse the Constitution, violate the Constitution, left, right, and center. You mentioned about Jerry Enriquez not too long ago fighting for redistricting. And we see the blatant disregard of the Constitution. And I'm glad that I'm keeping abreast with this, because I'm learning a lot in the process. If we don't change the way we are governed, if we are not going to take advantage of UNCAC and activate UNCAC, so ministers, these era representatives can go to jail when they break the law, which takes me to this MIRA situation and the Attorney General. We see, and I always use the case of Jerry, for example, how Jerry got through the courts, do the right thing, have a very great attorney with him. He has made great strides, but still, every corner you turn, the Briseno administration finds some type of way to block him or slow him down or almost hope that they could just exhaust this brother so they could have their way. It is difficult, it seems. It is difficult for the regular man, for the common man. And worse now, we have no ombudsman. Now, if for me as an individual, or let's say one of my brothers out in the street, we might not have the head that I have, I might get frustrated, but our right, or I go in front of our camera and start talk. But we have some of the brothers there out in the street, they get frustrated, things hard, and they resort to the worst. We break a crime, not even as heinous as most of these ministers. And you could guarantee that the common, regular, small grassroots man, they are going to jail. They have a hefty fine for pay. But we watch these ministers thief up the money all the time in the millions. And we cannot hold them accountable. Now, lastly, I know you want to comment. This thing with the Auditor General. I asked Alberto Agas, I asked Brother Webster yesterday, how is the Auditor General elected or selected by the Governor General under the guidance or recommendation of the Prime Minister? How in the world the Auditor General will be auditing her own people, so to speak? Because that's the way I see it, unless I am wrong.
I believe there is absolute room to look critically at how we are governed. And I think the PCC process attempted to do that. And I don't, while I understand the level of frustration, I was told once that the wheels of justice turn slowly, but they turn. That there's so many lessons. There's certain areas of weaknesses that we have learned, for example, in the efforts of Mr. Jeremy Enriquez, that when we get to constitutional reform, which is absolutely an imperative, that these situations will help to inform the changes we need to make so that because we don't know if it works until it's tested. Right, or the provisions work until they're tested, and Mr. Enrique has done, along with his legal team, a Herculean job in testing certain systems and structures to ensure that it works for the people. So we know, for example, those are areas that absolutely have to be addressed in the whole issue of constitutional reform. And a lot of work and a lot of money has gone into putting these recommendations together to ensuring that the will of the people can be reflected in the institutional arrangements that we have for governance. And yet not one Belizean has seen that report. It sits on the Prime Minister's desk. And I gather because they can't get behind these recommendations that have been made, because they have been, from the little I have heard and the conversations I have had with members of the PCC, these are not going to be easy decisions to take, because it will hold leaders to account. And that is what we should all be clamoring for. If you have nothing to hide, you have nothing to hide, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I want to shift gears a bit. I want to ask you, we have concerns here in Dangriga when it comes to the upcoming municipal election. And this is a question that comes up a lot. Not much, nothing that you would have, I don't think you would have control of at this point. But Dangriga people are concerned that, let's just say a UDP, we have a UDP mayor. Knowing we have the PUP have a super majority and it's under a PUP administration. Just in general, what are ways to ensure that even with that type of advantage slash disadvantage, how can the people of Dangriga be assured that if we have a UDP mayor, that it's going to be okay, or it's going to be even better than what we had? And of course, I'm talking with the support of the leader, or what you would help maybe rally,
See,
rally for.
I think we have to change the mindset and the culture that the executive is one and the same with the legislature. So when you're in the National Assembly, you're neither PUP or UDP. When you make laws for this country, you're doing so either as the government or as the king's loyal opposition that has constitutional responsibilities. And so we don't, in the system that we have, our backbenchers don't get to speak in the National Assembly. When the executive sends policies or proposes legislation to the House, the government becomes the rubber stamp. But a much more mature and more robust legislature would allow for dissenting views on both sides of the aisle, if that is what is required. And the ability for us to really look at these bills critically in committee, in the committees, when the committees meet, where we invite the population to come in and share their views if they have a particular view on a particular bill, is really where we help to form the best piece of legislation. But we have found, in my experience, that if it's proposed by the executive, the government will ensure that it proceeds as is. And really, it comes from the fact that partisan politics becomes so polarizing in all aspects of our decision making in this country. And I think the time has come where we have to, I said it today to the unions, we have to elevate the narrative. We have to elevate how we approach difficult situations, even when we share different views on that situation. And we can agree to disagree, but we have to make sure that we can clearly identify and justify and highlight where there are concerns and why there are concerns, and then also bring proposals on how we can help to strengthen that piece of legislation in the best interest of serving the people and the country. So we are evolving. I think we're evolving as an independent and democratic country. I know that there has been some recent changes in the legislation that governs how municipal governments are funded, for example, how they apply their tax system so there can be more fair play and more even distribution of collection of revenue, and how those revenues can be spent in terms of what specific rules and responsibilities that the municipal governments have. It should not be, and I can give you this example, that you're penalized as a citizen because you live in a constituency where the government rep was not elected. The people in Albert don't have access to a land clinic. Why? Because the opposition member is the elected representative. The people in Mesop, the people in Collet, it's not Collet, sorry, Queen Square, don't have access to certain services because their representatives come from the opposition. But we can have land clinics and immigration tickets in communities in the diaspora. when people who live in this country, because of who their representative is denied those services, something is absolutely wrong with that. When you are elected by the people, these resources, as I say, are not red or blue. These
Yeah.
resources that are paid into the consolidated fund is earmarked for the people of Belize, period. And so the people must have access to these services at all times.
Party leader, let me go to the comment and we'll come back and shift gears a bit or allow some of our viewers to dictate the pace a bit. Aaron Anderson, Team UDP deemed twins doing Samson, Dangriga Town Board 2027. Odessa Hilak, when you speak up, they want you dead. That is true. Robin Hood, the real problem, all the politics are brother and sister of the lodge. Philip Willoughby, can FOIA, Freedom of Information Act, be applied and used in the smart acquisition? Quick response, party leader, to that?
It can be. I don't know that it will be. It can be. Technically, it can be if the government chooses to respond. And if it doesn't respond, it's a legal process. And we know the legal process can sometimes be time consuming and lengthy. But several entities, including the chamber, including the opposition, including the NTUCB, including the Council of Churches, including the NEAB, all these entities, civil society and social partners have been advocating for and asking questions and writing letters, and still the information has not been forthcoming. So it goes to your point, Cyril, where even though there is legal infrastructure in place for the government to respond in particular way, they have gone rogue, in my view, and have totally disregarded the legal infrastructure that's in place for them to act in a particular way. And it's about holding people to account, right? We have to hold
Absolutely.
people to
Let me
account.
go back to few more, probably 3 more comments, and then we press on. Why hasn't anyone, group, organization start to apply for an injunction to ask for a stay on the smart acquisition? Quick
I
comment on
believe
that.
that I will say that the legal options are being discussed and explored. I think I can say that.
Very good. Warrior Carib, when will those recommendations for redistricting be put to rest? I guess that's up to the current administration.
It's up to the Election and Boundaries Commission, and the opposition does have representation on that commission, but the government has the majority say on the commission, and it really depends when the chair of that commission initiates the work that is necessary.
Okay, let me read about 2 more comments and then we can switch the pace a bit. Warrior Carib again. How will those politicians who are caught breaking the laws be punished and prosecuted with full force of the law? I really don't. I mean, do we even have anything to hold these people accountable? We now activate UNCAP. We try sign on to it 10 years ago, but we're not using it.
I do think that the cost sometimes is prohibitive, right? To take legal action. I can tell you I've been involved in a few legal actions where it's related to the Constitution of the United Democratic Party. And it gets costly and it gets tedious, and people say, well, worth it. But it is worth it. And there are, like UNCAC, as you know, that UNCAC was signed at the time by our Deputy Prime Minister, which was at the time the Honorable Patrick Farber. And then elections came around and we did not move to the implementation steps, but I think it ought to be fully explored, and we have to have certain standards of accountability, and we need to have also accountability partners, and the United Nations is an important accountability partner globally. So I am not at all opposed to finding ways to strengthen our ability to hold our political leaders to account. We cannot act in contravention to our own constitution and our own legislative framework, where it relates particularly the use of public funds and public resources that are earmarked for the Belizean people. So I'm not opposed to that at all in terms of creating that framework that will allow us to hold people to account, because until we do that, and until there are real consequences for people who violate their the responsibilities of their office, it will continue to happen.
We have more comments, but as I'm listening, party leader, we need all hands on deck. And I say we as a people, the people of Belize. There's so much happening, so much corruption, misappropriation of funds, some bold moves. I watched this video of the media trying to get a response from our prime minister, and not even a single word, not even a minute to respond to some questions when they are the ones working for us or should be working for us. So people get frustrated. People get tired of the blue, the red. We need all hands on deck. What type of encouragement for you as the leader of the United Democratic Party, the party leader, would you say to everyone out there, be it PUP, UDP, if we try penetrate through that politics there and say we need all Belizeans to listen up? What
I
is that
will
one
say,
message will you say to our people?
my view is that our national interest takes precedence. Because before we're anything, whatever the things that make us different or divide us, or we're Belizean, and their national interest in this country that we all should be advocating for. We should be all advocating for education system. Should be all advocating for a productive sector. We should all be advocating for the safeguarding of the rights and privileges of Belizean citizens. We should be all advocating for how our public resources are used to provide services to the Belizean people, whether it's healthcare or, again, education. There are things that should never become partisan. And because we're so small, and because this country is divided by red or blue, we sometimes lose sight of what is the unifying force. And the unifying force is that we are Belizean. That's our identity. That's who we are, and that's who we aspire to be, becoming the best Belize we can be, so that our children should not have to leave our country to aspire to meet their dreams. I'm very proud of the University of Belize, for example, starting a medical program, because our students Belizeans don't have to leave the country to pursue medicine. And I think for me, ultimately, the dream is that as citizens of this country, we should be able to fulfill our aspirations in this country and then use our collective aspirations to be a beacon of light to the rest of the world. We have the ability to do it. Um, and yes, you welcome investments from abroad, and we welcome, the opportunity to learn from countries that are more advanced from us, and all of that, all of those things, and those things are important. But we cannot lose our sense of self. And VL, these are institutions that are cornerstones, as I said earlier, of Belize's national development, and all of us want the same things. There might be different paths to get there, but all of us want Belize to come into her own. We have political independence, but we need to now have our economic independence. And we have to be able to produce more so that we become less reliant on other countries. We are importing right now almost 90% of what we consume, when this is a country that has so much natural resources. And maybe we don't have the economies of scale, but we have CARICOM as a market with millions of people. So we keep looking for the excuses, and I say, let's work together. There's a place for politics. There's a place to determine who we believe will best serve this country. But when decision has been taken by the people, then we must move forward together as best as we can. We are going to have different views, but we have to have the same goals, objectives, ambitions for Belize. And for me, all hands on deck means that all Belizeans come together to ensure that the best decisions are being made for Belize and not partisan ones.
Absolutely. Before we're getting close to a close, I have about 3 comments here, and then I'll probably read 2 we have on YouTube and Facebook. So this individual says, how do you explain a person expending millions of dollars to be elected to a position that pays less than 400K for the 5 years in term, reaches its maximum lifespan? The first Briceño term lasted 4 years, 4 months. A quick comment on that, party leader.
I think that I don't know what the Briceño administration paid to become elected, but I do believe that as citizens of this country, we must also hold ourselves to account, and we should not accept bribes or incentives to make decisions for Belize, because that's selling our souls to the devil, in my opinion. And so we should, I really think that campaign reform is a necessary initiative. I think that as citizens, it's a sacred duty to be able to make a decision in terms of who will lead this country and who will be placed in these positions. And they should not be incentivized by money. It should not. It's just not. And we can change that. We don't even need legislation to change that. We collectively, we the people collectively can say we're going to arrest that situation, because we see where it corrupts our systems of governance. It corrupts our public institutions. It puts us in a position where we are burdened by debt that generations to come will have to pay, and that we must be clear-headed and clear-minded in making the best decision for Belize's future. That is what it means for all hands on deck.
Absolutely. The second comment, as the situation stands, only the PUP makes laws. The ye always have it. All members of the House have opportunity to speak as long as they rise and are recognized by the speaker. I'm not sure if that's a question. Last one, it says PUP cabinet makes laws and the same PUP cabinet takes a proposal to the House of Representatives where they are rubber stamped and land passed into law. Comment?
So indeed, because the government now has a super majority, and because there are laws that forbid people to sort of cross the floor in terms of debates, what happens in the House of Representatives is that the opposition will have its say, but the government will have its way because there are more votes in favor of. But the move to the Senate, now that we have the 13-member Senate, and we have when we have an opportunity when the social partners and the members of the opposition come together, that they can have a deciding vote over whatever proposal the government may place, really helps to balance that, balance the power then of the House of Representatives saying it will pass the Senate. It has to be ratified by the Senate. And now we have our social partners on the Senate. We have 13 members on the Senate. That 13 senator is pivotal, because if the social partners and the opposition come together, it can stay a piece of legislation that they feel is not ready, and does not take some of the critical concerns into account. I think the OSH bill is an example of that, where both the opposition and the members of the social partners felt the um, the fact that domestic workers were not considered was too egregious an omission for this bill to proceed, and that they insisted on the amendments to be made before it came back for debate. So we do have an opportunity as members of the House to have robust debates in the committee meetings. But again, we have 2 members of the opposition in the committee meetings, and we have 4 members of government. So the imbalance of power is clear, that affords the government to rubber stamp these issues, rubber stamp these pieces of legislation if they decide to.
Very good. Let's read some more comments here. Odessa, okay. Help our youths. They're the future. Aaron Anderson, about time and a gear. Okay, and I must have said something. Let me scroll down to the more lengthier comments here. Philip Ulabi, the government subvention calculation to all municipality in 2026. I think you probably have a typo here, brother. So let me pass this at you, party leader. What are your views on the national election of the prime minister? That's a good one. Why is our prime minister not elected nationally by the people? That's an interesting question.
Belize participates in a Westminster system of governance. We follow that model, and that model does not afford for our citizenry to elect the prime minister separate and apart. And we may want to look at the hybrid from the Westminster system and the system that is used in the US, for example, so we can get to electing our prime minister. I like that idea personally. Um, but again, these are some of the recommendations that were provided for in the PCC report that sits on a shelf. And I think we need to all advocate, our independent media partners in particular. The report needs to be tabled in the National Assembly so we can look at these recommendations and we can make recommendations for our own of what of the 200 and I think, I don't know, like 238 recommendations or something close to that, which of those we believe we can advance in terms of constitutional amendments to the supreme law and to how we are governed.
Yeah, this is an interesting question because, you know, for those of you tuning in, the prime minister is elected. If he is elected by his people, that automatically qualifies him as a prime minister, being the party leader, the leader of the party, correct? So even in your constituency party leader, you probably have, I'm not certain, maybe under 3,000 people in your constituency. So 3,000 people would be responsible, hypothetically speaking, if that would be your constituency, would be responsible for selecting the prime minister of Belize. So that's something that we should really
But I
entertain. That's
think
an
I like the idea of looking at where the voices of the people can be heard on who the leadership of this country should be, more specifically, who will be the prime minister. While I think the math you do seems simple enough, the prime minister comes from the party that won the popular vote. And so it's not just 3,000 from say, the Albert constituency, but it's a number of votes that the United Democratic Party collectively would have received in the election. So it's not quite as simple in structure as you would have
right.
articulated it. But there is power in having the people, real power, determining who the leader of Belize can be and should be. It means making some changes in the system, in the Westminster model that we have used for years, but our country has evolved, and maybe it's time for us to have that discussion.
Yeah, we need to have that discussion indeed because I always, again, I will allude to it, the Jerry Enrique situation. To sign off on whether or not we will have an election for the general election, the Governor General is the one who signed, who said that, okay, yes, go ahead, let's have the election this day. When Jerry started taking the government to court, he wrote to the Governor General, if you press through, if you go forward with this election, it will be unconstitutional. I started by explaining or sharing my sentiment about the Constitution of Belize, about how our leaders keep violating the Constitution left, right, and center. The Governor General takes that letter and sends to the Attorney General. Yes, to the Attorney General. Now the Attorney General gets himself an attorney. So many loops and turns and hoop, and the Belizean people get nowhere. Imagine if Jerry Enriquez never have the level of endurance. He wasn't fortunate enough to get that attorney who's willing to work with him. I don't think the man may get anywhere as near as where he's at today. So I said that to say, where do we draw the line? The Constitution is not working for us, obviously, because they always find a way to break the law. The Auditor
I
General, again, one more thing, Party Leader, the Auditor General, I want you categorically, I would like your take on this as well. The Auditor General is auditing people who she seems to be compromised. Wouldn't you agree? What's your take on that? I just don't think our laws are set up for the people. It is more for these politicians. They are so insulated, they're protected, immune.
I would think I was disappointed personally that the Auditor General waited for direction from the Office of the Prime Minister to decide whether an audit would be done on BDF
Not
or
independent.
the way the legislation, the way the supreme law of the land is instructs, the Auditor General has the autonomy to do her work. The Auditor General also gets the first call on the budget. That's what the Constitution says. So she should be able to have the resources, he or she, to be able to do the work of providing the kind of oversight in terms of protecting the purse and to mitigate against this kind of corrupt practices that we are now seeing. But it's not limited to the Auditor General. We have the Integrity Commission, we have the Contractor General's Office, there we have the Joint Public Accounts Committee, and these mechanisms, or if they all do what they are expected to do, if they're all given the resources to do what they are constitutionally mandated to do, would it be able to have a more a, a more a system that is less likely to be corrupted. But these institutions are not well resourced, and it, you know, both administrations have been guilty of that. But this is where the engagement of our citizens are so important, and where the people has a place in governance and how our country is run, because the people can bring the pressure and advocate that the resources be provided. I will tell you, the office of the leader of the opposition is a constitutional office, and it should receive resources from the public purse to hold this government to account. But there has never been a time in post independence where there has been an allocation from the public purse for the constitutional office holder of the leader of the opposition under either administration, and those things are
Is that
improper.
something you would implement if you become the
It
prime
is
minister?
I would absolutely implement it, and in fact, I have been advocating for it because I think it's important. And don't come to me and say, "Oh, you guys have to do it, so we don't have an obligation to do it." We have an obligation to do what is right for the people, and so I definitely believe that the any constitutional office holder that has a clear mandate by the Constitution ought to be able to be given resources from the public purse to do the job as outlined in the Constitution. That's my
Just
position.
thank you for that. Just as a background for those of you who might not be keeping up, I asked the question about the Auditor General because there are these items, just so many. You have monies being paid for seasoning, for boots, for ridiculous amount of monies being paid for vegetables, for the BDA, for the Ministry of Defense. Here is a post from a Facebook friend. This person says, "My dear Facebook family and friends, please remember the following about this Auditor General. One, she was handpicked by the administration despite questions about her qualifications for this post. Two, she was given a contract that runs until 2047. Until 2047, and we are only at 2026. No previous Auditor General was ever given anything close to this. We have four. Should I pause? Is there, you want to comment on anything on this before I continue?
I was not involved in the selection process of the Auditor General. We debated against it in the National Assembly because we felt this tenureship that she was being offered, which goes up to 2047, really was not in the best interest of the Belizean people. There was a process, as we understand, and went to the Governor General, and there was approval, etc., etc. But I think it's important that when we hire professionals, whether in the public sector or the private sector, your character matters. The integrity that you bring to the table, because there's some things you can't legislate behavior, right? And it seems to me that the Auditor General, certainly by the Constitution, has a very clear mandate, and so should not have to lean on the office of the Prime Minister or the government to make particular decisions for this country. How do you legislate the behavior of an Auditor General who decides to act in contravention of, or feels that she needs to lean on whatever input she's getting from the office of the Prime Minister before she seeks to act? She has a duty, she has an obligation to act in the interest of this country. And autonomy doesn't mean you're not held accountable to the people. You also have an issue. So you're going to do an audit of BDF. So what's the terms of reference of this audit? You, as the Auditor General, have a responsibility to tell the people what it is you intend to do and what information you will be looking for, because it cannot be that what comes out of these audits is what we already know. The objective of the audit is to, one, see where the systems are broken and seek to fix them, the broken system that we have, and we have a broken financial system, and then to hold the perpetrators or those who insist on doing wrongdoing to account. And so I am disappointed, and because I think that she's waiting to be guided by an administration who now has to audit themselves.
That is unfortunate. I want to read these last two, which is, it says here, she receives a gigantic salary increase, hence one of the reasons why she can go on these, despite being independent. From what we have recently seen, the only moves she's introduced by the government officials and does everything she's told to do. This is a problem. So how could we be assured that justice will be served? And when justice is not served, what do we, the Belizean people, do? I asked you earlier, what do you say to the Belizean people, for those who have this mentality that, well, that my party the in, so no matter what, uno de pa uno own. What do you say to those who say I fend for myself and not deal with government? What can you do? What can the average people do for them to gain confidence and say, you know what, it's not about red or blue, but we must stand behind the UDP, we must stand behind PSU, we must stand with BNTU, BNTU must stand. This is getting out of control. This is tyrannical. This is heading toward a dictatorship. Like we got to do something.
I say the Auditor General is one oversight mechanism, right? We can start at the ministries with the FOs and the AOs and the accounting officers. And then we can start with the Ministry of Finance and the various units under the Ministry of Finance. We can look at the whole involvement in the budgetary exercise, how monies are budgeted and allocated, how contracts are vetted, that's the Contractor General. When we look at members in political office or public officials who are living way beyond their means, not within anything that a public sector salary can sustain, then the Integrity Commission, the work of the Integrity Commission becomes important, because the question is, where are you getting the money? And you have to follow the money. And then, of course, we have the Joint Public Accounts Committee, so that when these audit reports are brought before the National Assembly and then referred to the Joint Public Accounts Committee for examination and report back to the National Assembly, all these entities have to be working optimally for us to have the kind of oversight and accountability that you just described.
One question, I'll read a comment from YouTube, one from Facebook, and then Party Leader, I'll give you the opportunity to close out, to just grace the Belizean people, give them some assurance. We have here, what are your views on the separation of the power whereby your representatives should not be appointed as ministers because they become the executive arm of government when automatically, which automatically erases the line between the executive and the legislative arm of government?
I think the system of government that we now have allows for a democracy. It allows for the people in this country to have a say, to determine who they entrust to provide the kind of leadership in terms of the legislative, not only in terms of serving as a representative, but in formulating the policies which come out of your manifesto commitments, that the policies that you intend to implement should and when you come into governance. I think we cannot have a system, in my view, that minimizes or dilutes in any way the will of the people. And I think we, for too long, because of the way public officers and political officers have conducted themselves, there's this notion that that they can act in a way that contravenes that sacred public trust that they were given by the people. And the only way we can reverse that is when the people stand up against those issues. Even if you believe that the person that you elected was the right person for the job, then you also have a duty and an obligation to say to that person, you're not doing what I elected you to do. And the way you do that is to stand up and to speak up on the issues and to get engaged in the national conversation. And in those activities or initiatives that bring the voices of the people to the forefront. I can't say it enough. The power belongs to the hands of the people. And for a long time, we as people have removed ourselves from the equation and said it's them, but it's really us. And whenever I talk about, when people say, oh, you hold the government to account, I say, I have to hold the United Democratic Party to account first, and then I can hold the government to account, because it starts with us. We have to hold ourselves to account. We get the leaders that we vote for, and we stay with the leaders that we're not prepared to remove from the equation. Only the people can determine who will sit in governance. And I think that's the collective wisdom of the people is important in terms of our way of our system of governance, which is a democracy. Is it the democracy perfect? Not at all. But from all the systems of governance I have seen in the world, it seems to be, in my opinion, the best system of governance that we have. And I remember, some say that maybe we need to shift to a more guided democracy. But the democracy dictates that the voices of the people are heard in all matters affecting the people. And so our roles and responsibility, and the role that you have assumed, and I'm very proud of you, is to create a platform where we can be having this dialogue, whether we agree or don't agree, or we bring different views to the table. The fact that we can have a respectful engagement and sharing of ideas and opinions is where it starts. And my appeal, my earnest appeal to the people of this country is that whatever decisions we make today is going to affect the future viability of this country that we love, this country that we are proud of, this country that we call home, this country that will never force us to leave our shores unless we want to. We have, as citizens, a duty and obligation to the jewel we call Belize. And our voices matter. Let me say, our voices matter, our actions matter. And we can't become so jaded, or we can't allow apathy to set in, that we no longer care about what happens to this country, because this country needs us. And the only way we are going to address some of the issues and some of the areas that we believe need to be strengthened and those kinds of things is if we ensure that the people are engaged. It's the most important tool we have in governance. I call on all Belizeans, and a lot of people comment on social media. I see lots and lots of comments on social media. That same energy, if we're going on the streets, let's bring it to the streets. If we're going to, whatever action we're going to take collectively as a people, we need to bring that same energy so that the persons who were elected by the people can then hear in a low and clear and decisive way what the will of the people is on matters of national importance.
Absolutely. Final comments. I'll try to go through these as quick as possible, and then we could close out. Ms. Joyce Cayetano, it seems that the government of Belize has not been held accountable. So this is the evidence of the carefree behavior. Absolutely, my dear sister. Warrior Carib, we Belizean from the diaspora want to be able to vote like other countries do outside of Belize. Real quick, let me just go through these and then it's getting late. Aaron Anderson, you know why he actually, okay, I missed your comment, my brother, and I missed that one. Let's go up. Mr. Eric Castillo, campaign reform is mandatory. It's not an idea. Francis Roches, Aaron Anderson, sir, seeing that you are only having, okay, I'm reading the comments that are relevant and applicable to the topics we've been talking about. Shirlene Enriquez, what are your views on setting a concrete date for all general elections moving forward? Let's read two more, and then you could just briefly comment on those, party leader, and then we close out. Odessa Hila, things are set up for the rich people in our country. Two more. Let's go all the way to the top. Carl Gabriel, I guess you're laughing at something or someone. Let's see. Francis Roches, Aaron Anderson, please. Okay. So, guys, thank you very much. If I missed your comments or your comment, I've been scrolling, trying to see the comments that are most relevant to what we've been talking about. If I missed any of your comments, I cannot cover all of them. I appreciate each and every one of you for the support, for always tuning in, for commenting, for sending the messages. Some of you call and share your views. Listen, it can't stop there. We have to become active citizens. You got to do your part. I do my part by coming on here every week and try to get qualified people, people who know what they're talking about, to help share the information and break it down for you. But when the time comes for Belizeans to stand up, the power lies in your hand. When you vote in the municipal election and in the general election, think about the future, think about your children, think about the action that you will take. It has a karmic effect. Whatever action you choose to do, it will follow you. Honorable Party Leader Tracy Taegar Panton, thank you so much for taking the time, for making yourself available. I appreciate you. I will continue to stand by anyone, including the UDP, once they're serious about stamping out corruption, once they're serious about holding this current administration accountable. This is your moment to just grace the Belizean people with your conclusion.
Again, thank you, Cyril, for having me on the show, for allowing me this level of engagement with people in Dangriga, but for those who tune into your show all over Belize. I think that, as I said before, accountability matters. I think it's with us. I think I believe that we cannot be complicit in areas that affect the future of this country. We cannot be complicit in areas that affect the national development of this country. We can't be complicit in areas where, as we have seen, corruption is on naked national display. And it takes, there's the power of one, but there's also the power of the collective, of saying we have had enough and we have had enough. And yes, sometimes it's hard. People fear losing their jobs, they fear kids losing their scholarships, they're fearful. This government has done a good job about instigating and institutionalizing fear for having a voice, but this constitution of our country affords you freedom of affiliation. It affords you freedom of speech. It affords you fundamental rights and freedoms that allows you to be able to do your part in the work, the very arduous work of nation building. And so I appeal to all Belizeans, to everybody who has listened or tuned in, let us not operate from a place of fear. This country means too much to us, and this country has tremendous untapped potential, and we have a part to play as well as citizens, a very important part, perhaps the most important part, to insist that we hold our political leaders and public officers to account. The BTL acquisition is bad for this country, and we must not ever be afraid to speak honestly, to speak openly, and to be definitive in how we approach these matters of national importance.
Absolutely. Bande Cyril, thank you so much. Belize, Dangriga, to those of you in the diaspora, I am Cyril Uruwei. This has been Dangriga Unmuted, where we unmute the truth and we demand change. Party Leader, Honorable Tracy Taegar Panton, Bande Cyril, thank you very much. We'll be in touch.
Have a good night.
The people's campaign. And if you're not serious about change, I suggest you stay out of the way and give Cyril Uruwei Garcia. Make we give her this chance. We want this change, we need this change, we need that change right now. We need our country back from the PUP and the UDP. We need our country back. Things are getting harder and harder every day. We need our country back. Cyril Uruwei. proven leader, Uruwei na fire. A fearless advocate, Uruwei na fire. Son of soil from Dangriga, Uruwei na fire. Ready to fight for his people. We want this change, we need this change, we need that change right now. We need our country back, back from the PUP and the UDP. We need our country back. Things are getting harder and harder every day. We need our country back. Cyril Uruwei, he no come to play. We need our Dangriga back. Uruwei na fi we, set an example for all the youths. Uruwei na fi we, beginning of golden age. Uruwei na fi we, true representative for all of us. Uruwei. The people's campaign. And if you're not serious about change, I suggest you stay out of the way and give Cyril Uruwei Garcia. Make we give her this chance. We want this change, we need this change, we need that change right now. We need our country back, back from the PUP.
Tonight in Dangriga, a wave of voter dissatisfaction is hitting local and national leaders alike. Mayor Robert Mariano, ERA Representative Dr. Louis Zabane, and even Prime Minister John Briceño. A new survey by pollster and retired assistant professor Dr. Philip Castillo shows support for Dr. Zabane has plunged dramatically. Remember, he won big in 2020 with 61% of the vote, and his popularity soared even higher in 2025 when he secured 76.5%. But Dr. Castillo's latest polling tells a very different story, one that suggests confidence in these leaders is slipping fast.
He's underwater because I think he's at 41%, which means that more at 41%, 4 out of every 10 voters do not approve of the job that he's doing. Now, again, we did not ask them why, but some voters, some citizens did provide an opinion. And then the opinion would be that in terms of accessing the area rep, that there seem to be challenges in accessing him, basically, in meeting him and those and that specific issue.
A closer look at the numbers shows Dr. Zabane lost support in Dangriga Town and Saraway, but he's still strong in outlying villages like Hope Creek. Responding to the poll, Dr. Zabane says he welcomes Dr. Castillo's work, but argues that data collected closer to election time gives a truer read on how voters will actually decide.
First of all, the size of the poll is relatively small, but still helpful, so I'm not knocking it in that sense. I'm just saying that if you look at the last polls that he has done, you could go back and check them out. They have been consistently lower than the actual performance. So in my view, I don't believe that the numbers are that low. But even if they were, it is good to know so that you can take action.
One of the things that people were saying is that you're hard to access.
Yes, and that's the one that seems farthest from the truth. I am one of the very consistent ERA representatives that have office hours. So on Thursdays, like for example tomorrow, I have my office.
The people's campaign. And if you're not serious about change, I suggest you stay out of the way and give Cyril Uruwei Garcia. Make we give her this chance. We want this change, we need this change, we need that change right now. We need our country back, back from the PUP and the UDP. We need our country back. Things are getting harder and harder every day. We need our country back. Cyril Uruwei, he no come to play. We need our Dangriga back. Uruwei na fire. He's a proven leader. Uruwei na fire. A fearless advocate. Uruwei na fire. Son of soil from Dangriga. Uruwei na fire.
When the
Ready to fight
Prime Minister, when it was announced that the Prime Minister press the pause button on the acquisition, me happy. You don't tell the truth, you never happy too? Tell the truth, man, you never happy too? the past, that PUP at its best. When it happened before, we don't know where that. That are PUP. The past, the PUP at its best. Because what the past allows us to do now is to make sure that there is real, genuine consultation with the people of Belize on this issue. So that the technical people from BTL can go all across this country, go to the schools, go to UB, go to the community centers all across the country and talk to the people in our cordial way, in our honest way, in our open way, in our friendly way, and taking time doing it with no gun and nobody head.
But was there such consultation? If it happened, it surely escaped the attention or notice of our newsroom, and we don't see it on Digi's Facebook page. All the consultation meetings they posted were with high-level parties, and all of them before Hyde's mid-February speech.
And if after a couple months of consultation, the people not there with it, then BTL will have to take a chill pill, you know. They will have to take a chill pill. They will have to shelf it. Because ultimately, it's the people of Belize who owns the company. It's not Mr. Lizarraga. It's not the board of BTL. It's the people of Belize.
In the end, though, that populist spin didn't count for much. That chill pill lasted for about 6 months. 5 days ago, on July 31st, Chairman Mark Lizarraga told the NTUCB in a letter, quote, Belize Telemedia Limited confirms that stakeholder consultations were undertaken in relation to the proposed transaction. He adds, quote, responsibility for this matter now rests with the Public Utilities Commission. Accordingly, BTL will continue to respect and participate in the applicable regulatory process and will abide by any determinations made by the PUC. But 4 days later, Lizarraga's board took a vote on the acquisition without any PUC approval, and they voted 8-2 in favor. A press release announcing the long-delayed vote makes scarce mention of the PUC and any regulatory constraints. It simply says that the only thing pending now is, quote, the satisfactory completion of continued due diligence and the negotiation of appropriate representations, warranties, and other contractual protections for BTL as the buyer. Once the negotiations advance to the definitive agreement stage, the share purchase agreement will be submitted to the board for separate review and final approval before execution, end quote. And while the PUC put out a feeble and toothless release today saying, quote, accordingly, the Commission is unable to comment on the public discussion on the proposed transaction or indicate a likely outcome before completing its review. The decision will constitute the PUC's official position on the matter. But this accountant and business leader says essentially the BTL board's announcement is the PUC's decision.
The transaction essentially is a foregone conclusion because that vote yesterday essentially tells the public and tells everyone that this deal is going through one way or the other. And who, from a PUC standpoint, it's just a matter of timing as to when they give some sort of indication that it would have been approved.
So you don't trust that the PUC is particularly acting in the best interest of the public?
I think until we hear from the PUC, I think I'd be reserved to make a comment on that.
So do you consider it a done deal?
From a BTL standpoint, yes, it's a done deal. I don't think this will go back or be reversed. It's just the nature of the thing.
Listen, I don't like to know when the Prime Minister, when it was announced that the Prime Minister
people's campaign.
press the pass button
about change, I suggest to stay out of the way and give Cyril Uruwei
you never happy to?
Make we give her,
Tell the truth, man, you never happy to? The pass,
we need this change, we need that change right now. We need our country back. PUP and the UDP.
What may happen before?
We need our
don't know where
country
that.
back.
Not enough PUP.
Things are getting harder and harder every day. We need our country back. Cyril Uruwei, he look on the play. We need our Dangriga back. Uruwei the fire. He's a proven leader. Uruwei the fire. A fearless advocate. Uruwei the fire. Son of Soil from Dangriga. Uruwei the fire. Ready to fight for his people. We want this change. We need this change. We need that change right now. We need our country back. Back from the PUP and the UDP. We need our country back.
But was there such consultation? If it happened, it surely escaped the attention and notice of our newsroom, and we don't see it on Bridges' Facebook page. All the consultation meetings they posted were with high-level parties. All of them before Hyde's mid-February speech.
And in fact, there are a couple months of consultation. They detail what happens to because ultimately it's the people of Belize who owns the company. It's not Mr. Lizarraga. It's not the board of BTL. It's the people of Belize.
In the end, though, that populist spin didn't come from much. Chill pill lasted for about 6 months. 5 days ago, on July 31st, Chairman Martin Robert